The purple neon sign outside my bar flickered like it was arguing with itself. 1 second it said night bar, the next it just said night because the bottom loop of the B had burned out 3 years ago and I never bothered fixing it. On Dusk Ridge, spelling wasn't important. Surviving was. The wind screamed across the plains hard enough to sandblast steel. It carried dust sharp enough to flay skin and memories alike. You learned quickly that if something stayed on this planet too long, it either adapted or broke. People were no different. Inside, the air smelled like recycled oxygen, ozone, and cheap synthetic gin. The counter was made from the curved casing of a crashed starship engine, polished until the old scorch marks looked intentional. Every scratch had a story. Most of them involved someone bleeding. I wiped the counter with a rag that used to be part of a military uniform. I didn't remember whose. Maybe mine. Maybe someone else's. Fabric was fabric out here. History didn't matter once it stopped breathing. The music thumped low and heavy, vibrating through the floor plates. The generator in the back coughed every few minutes, skipping a beat like an old heart refusing to quit. When it did, the lights flickered, and everyone in the bar paused, just for a second, to see if this was the moment everything went dark for good. It wasn't. Not yet. I liked to stand behind the bar with my sleeves rolled up. It let people see the scars. It saved time. On Dusk Ridge, scars were credentials. If you didn't have any, it meant you were either very dangerous or very stupid. My left wrist carried a black geometric tattoo, lines intersecting in patterns too precise to be decorative. Most people assumed it was some kind of military unit mark. I never corrected them. The truth was simpler and worse. I didn't know what it was. I'd woken up with it 10 years ago in a field hospital after the siege of Aunt Eris. The doctors told me it was nerve damage and gave me painkillers strong enough to erase a childhood. When the pain stopped, the tattoo stayed. Silent, dormant, watching. Behind the bar, Naomi Pike spun on her stool, boots hooked around the rung like she might need to launch herself into the air at any moment. She wore a flight jacket older than the bar, patched so many times it had more stitches than fabric. "You ever notice," she said, raising her glass, "that you opened a bar on a planet where the wind screams loud enough to drown out your own thoughts?" I didn't look up. "People pay for atmosphere." She snorted. "People pay to forget. You opened a business in the middle of a memory wipe." "Works out," I said. "If they forget, nobody remembers to collect debts." Naomi laughed sharp and loud, the kind of sound that dared the universe to challenge it. She was a freelance pilot, brave, talented, and permanently broke. Her tab was longer than the planetary blockade list, and just like the blockade, she always found a way around it. Around her, the bar was filling up. 2 miners argued quietly at the east table, helmets still on because they'd learned the hard way not to leave anything unattended. A freelance medic nursed a cup of real coffee like it was sacred. A pair of scavengers played cards with hands that never strayed far from their weapons. Nobody smiled much. That didn't mean they weren't happy. Happy out here just meant alive. The blast doors hissed open, pressure equalizers whining as the station fought to keep the dust outside where it belonged. A gust of wind shoved 3 figures into the bar before the doors slammed shut again. Conversation dipped. Not stopped, just softened. The first 2 were standard Dusk Ridge fare. Scavengers. Mismatched armor plates, oil-stained gloves, the smell of desperation clinging to them like sweat. They moved loud, careless. Already scanning for trouble they could turn into profit. The third figure didn't move like that. She was smaller, cloaked. The fabric drank in the neon light instead of reflecting it. She moved with a smoothness that made the others look clumsy. Every step measured, deliberate, like she was walking through a room she already understood better than anyone else in it. She didn't look around. She didn't need to. They headed for the darkest booth in the back, the one where the lights always struggled to reach. The woman sat with her back to the wall, hood still up, hands folded calmly on the table. That was when I felt it. Not fear. Tension. It pressed against the back of my neck like standing too close to a live power line. Naomi leaned closer, her voice low. "New blood. She walks like the floor might bite her," Naomi added. Or like she's afraid she might bite the floor, I muttered. I'd seen that posture before. High-value targets moved like that. People who knew the universe wanted them dead but hadn't figured out how yet. Don't, Naomi warned. You just stabilized the generator. Don't invite chaos. I'm serving drinks, I said, grabbing a tray. Not invitations. I crossed the bar, cataloging the room out of habit. 2 drunks. 1 medic. No visible heavy weapons. The scavengers flanking the cloaked woman sat tense, hands close to their holsters. When I reached the booth, one of the scavengers glared up at me. His cybernetic, I whirred softly, adjusting focus. What can I get you? I asked. Whiskey, he said. Real stuff, not the battery acid you feed the locals. All I have is battery acid, I replied. But I can put a little umbrella in it if you want to feel special. The scavenger snarled, but the woman raised a gloved hand. The motion was sharp, precise. Water, she said. Her voice cut through the noise like ice through glass. Soft, controlled. A voice that expected obedience without needing to demand it. Water's more expensive than whiskey, I said. Filtration units are acting up. I didn't ask for the price, she replied. I asked for water. I held her gaze, or tried to. The hood hid most of her face, but I caught a glimpse of pale skin and the curve of a chin that looked like it had never known dust. Coming right up. I don't know why I gave her water from my personal reserve. Maybe because she sounded like she hadn't tasted anything clean in a long time. Maybe because something in my gut told me refusing would be a mistake. When I set the glass down, her fingers brushed mine. Cold. Not dead cold. Not unnatural. Just wrong. As I walked back to the bar, I felt her eyes on me. The sensation followed me like static clinging to skin. The wind outside howled louder, rattling the station walls. Midnight was coming. On Dusk Ridge, midnight meant the surge. The planetary magnetic anomaly that scrambled electronics, bent shadows, and occasionally peeled memories right out of people's heads. Everyone knew the drill. Finish your drink. Sit on the grounded mats. Don't think too hard about the past. I wiped the counter again, slower this time. Somewhere behind me, a chair scraped. I didn't turn around. Not yet. The bar recovered the way it always did, by pretending nothing mattered. A miner laughed too loud to prove he wasn't scared. A scavenger slapped a card on the table hard enough to make the glasses jump. Naomi took another sip like her drink contained courage. The music kept thumping. The generator kept coughing. The purple neon kept buzzing its broken little lie. But the back booth stayed wrong. It wasn't just that the woman wore a cloak indoors. Dusk Ridge had taught everyone to keep layers on, even in heat, even under lights, even when it made no sense. It wasn't even that she'd ordered water, which was the kind of luxury request that usually got you laughed out of a frontier bar. It was the stillness. People on this planet were always moving, restless, twitchy, watching doors, watching hands, watching exits. Even when they sat, they shifted. Even when they drank, they listened. She didn't shift. She didn't fidget. She sat with her back to the wall like she owned the concept of safety. I had seen that before, but never out here. Not from miners, not from medics, not from the kind of scavengers who crawled through shipwrecks and called it a career. That posture belonged to people who lived in palaces. Or prisons. Naomi slid her stool an inch closer to me, pretending it was just for comfort. Her eyes stayed on the mirror behind the bottles, so she didn't have to turn her head. Tell me you're not going to do something heroic, she murmured. I'm not heroic, I said. You vaulted a counter once to stop a guy from stabbing his own brother. That wasn't heroism, I replied. That was bad business. Naomi's mouth twitched, but she didn't smile. That booth is trouble. Everything is trouble, I said. The difference is whether it pays. Naomi lifted her glass and pointed, subtly, with the rim. Look at her hands. I did. The woman's gloves were dark, matte, not reflective. The kind you wore if you didn't want light catching your movements. The scavengers flanking her looked like hired muscle, but they kept glancing at her for permission before they breathed too loudly. And her hands stayed calm. No tapping, no clenching, no nervous twitch. Just waiting. Waiting for what? A loud voice cut through the room. Don. Another round. I turned to the bar's other problem. Cale was leaning against the counter like gravity had personally insulted him. He was 3 bottles into my cheapest synth gin and already acting like he owned the air. Cale didn't mine or for a living. He mined reactions. He liked to poke people until they snapped, then act offended when they bled. Your tab is a crime, I told him. Put it next to Naomi's, he slurred. Naomi raised her glass without looking at him. If my tab is a crime, yours is a war. Cale laughed and took that as permission to keep existing. I poured anyway. Better to keep the drunks dull than let them go hunting for sparks. But sparks on Dusk Ridge always found dry grass. Cale's eyes drifted past me, past the bottles, past the neon reflections in the mirror, and locked on the back booth. His face changed in a way I recognized immediately, the ugly little bloom of entitlement. Oh, he said, like he'd discovered treasure. What's that? Naomi's jaw tightened. Don't. Cale didn't hear her, or he did and enjoyed ignoring it. He pushed away from the counter, swaying slightly, and started walking. Not stumbling, not weaving, walking with purpose. The kind of drunk walk that meant the alcohol wasn't in control anymore. His ego was. I set the bottle down. My hand didn't shake, but my body did that subtle thing it always did when trouble walked into a room. Muscles tightening, mind sharpening, attention narrowing. Naomi exhaled slowly through her nose. Please, she whispered. Like prayer, like bargaining with fate. Please don't let him. Cale reached the booth. He leaned over the table, invading the woman's space like it was his right. The scavengers stood halfway from their seats, hands near their holsters. The woman didn't move. Cale grinned, looking pleased with himself. You're too pretty to be hiding in the dark, he slurred. It was the oldest line in the galaxy. It had never once improved a situation. One of the scavengers opened his mouth, probably to threaten him, but the woman raised a gloved hand again. Sharp, precise. Sit, she said. Her voice didn't rise, didn't strain. It didn't need to. The scavengers sat instantly, as if their spines were attached to her words. Cale blinked, misreading everything. He leaned closer. See? Your boys know who runs this sector. His breath hit the edge of her hood. He didn't even realize he was close enough to be in danger. Take it off, he said, reaching toward the cloth. Let's see if the face matches the voice. I pushed off the bar. Not running. Not yet. But moving. The way a man moves when he knows exactly how fast things can go wrong. Cale, I called. Sit down. He didn't even turn his head. Stay behind your counter, old man. This doesn't concern you. It's my bar, I said. Everything inside these walls concerns me. A few heads turned. People weren't watching Cale anymore. They were watching the booth. Watching me. Waiting for a show. Cale chuckled. He thinks he's a hero. I felt something shift in the air. Subtle, almost imperceptible. Like the moment before a storm breaks. The woman flinched. Not away. Toward him. A micro-movement of aggression. A tightening in her shoulders. A stillness that wasn't calm anymore. It was coiled. Cale didn't notice. But I did. I crossed the room in 3 strides. Cale's fingers grabbed the edge of her hood. And the world went quiet. Like the music dipped. Like the generator held its breath. Like the planet itself leaned closer. Cale yanked. The hood fell back. For a single second, nobody moved. She was striking. Hair like starlight, pale and smooth. The kind of beauty that didn't look human because it didn't feel earned. Felt engineered. But it was her eyes that froze blood. Violet. Not colored contacts violet. Not neon reflection violet. Living violet. With slit pupils that contracted and expanded too fast like a predator struggling to decide whether to kill. Cale's grin faltered. His face twisted in disgust and fear, like his brain finally caught up to what his mouth had invited. Then her lips curled, and the bar saw her teeth. Canines too long, too sharp, too clean. Not decorative. Functional. Nocturne blood. I didn't know the species name then. I just knew the instinct that hit every living person in that room at once. Predator. The kind you don't bargain with. The kind you don't insult. Cale staggered back, his courage evaporating. Monster, he shrieked. He went for the knife on his belt. That was the line. Not the hood. Not the insult. Not even the fear. The knife. The woman moved. She didn't stand. She launched. A blur of cloak and pale skin. Her body crossing the space between them with an animal speed that turned Cale into prey in a heartbeat. She wasn't going for his knife. She was going for his throat. My body reacted before my mind could argue. Protect the civilian. Neutralize the threat. Even if the civilian was an idiot. Even if the threat was a princess of the night. I stepped into her path. She hit me midair. Strong, shockingly strong. And for a fraction of a second, we collided like two forces that didn't belong in the same world. I didn't strike her. I intercepted her momentum, twisting, shifting my weight, turning the attack into a controlled spin. A grappling move, designed to subdue, designed to keep people alive. She twisted in my grip, her jaw snapping toward my forearm. I felt the air move as her teeth came for flesh. I didn't have a choice. I threw a short, controlled punch, sharp, measured, aimed at the jaw hinge. Not a knockout, a distraction strike, just enough to force a release. The sound was louder than the music, louder than the shouting, louder than the wind outside. Crack. A sickening snap of calcium. The woman froze. I froze. Cale hit the floor backward, tripping over a chair, scrambling away on his hands like a coward suddenly aware of mortality. The woman pulled away from me, a gloved hand flying to her mouth. Her eyes went wide. Not fear. Disbelief. A single drop of dark blood slid between her fingers. She lowered her hand. And on the dirty floor, between spilled gin and sawdust, lay a white shard. A thong. For a heartbeat, she stared at it like the universe had committed a personal insult. Then she looked up at me. Her violet eyes weren't wild anymore. They were cold, absolute, the way a judge looks at the guilty before pronouncing sentence. You? She hissed. The word whistled slightly through the gap. I raised my hands, palms open, instinctively trying to de-escalate even as my heart hammered. I was trying to stop you from. You broke my thong, she said again. Not loud, not dramatic. Final. A death sentence spoken politely. The bar stayed silent because everyone understood something at the same time. Whatever she wasn't used to being hurt. And now she knew exactly who had done it. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved. Not Cale, curled on the floor clutching his ribs. Not the scavengers, half standing, hands frozen inches from their weapons. Not the miners, not the medic, not even Naomi. The bar was holding its breath. The woman's gaze stayed locked on me. Violet eyes, slit pupils slowly dilating, contracting, measuring distance, threat, outcome. Her hand hovered near her mouth, blood dark against the pale fabric of her glove. You broke my thong, she repeated. This time, the room understood it wasn't a statement. It was a verdict. I swallowed. I was trying to stop you from killing him. Her head tilted slightly, the way predators do when they're deciding whether a sound is worth responding to. He was already dead, she said. He just hadn't fallen yet. A few people flinched. Cale whimpered. The scavengers finally drew their weapons, not aiming, not threatening, just holding. Ready. They didn't look at me. They didn't look at Cale. They watched her. I took a slow step back, careful not to move too fast. Training whispered in my skull. De-escalate. Slow the room. Don't give fear momentum. Cale? I said without looking away from her. Crawl back to your table. Cale didn't argue. He dragged himself across the floor, knocking over a chair, leaving a smear of spilled gin and dignity behind him. The woman didn't care. Her attention never left me. You intervened, she said softly. You touched me. You struck me. I stopped a fight, I replied. No, she corrected. You altered a bloodline. The words didn't mean anything to me yet, but the way she said them made my stomach sink. Naomi's voice cut in too bright, too casual. Okay, everyone breathe. Drinks are on pause. Violence is over. Nobody's dying tonight. The woman turned her head. Just slightly. Naomi stopped talking. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even hostility. It was the effortless dominance of something used to silence. The woman looked back at me. You smell like war, she said. Old war. Lost war. I didn't answer. She lowered her hand from her mouth. Blood stained her glove now, seeping into the fabric. It should have been grotesque. Instead, it felt ceremonial. She glanced at the broken thong on the floor. For the first time since she'd entered the bar, something flickered across her face. Not rage, not fear, loss. She stepped forward. Every muscle in my body screamed not to move. Her presence pressed in, heavy, suffocating, like gravity had decided to double its claim on the space around her. The lights above us flickered, just once. So quick I might have imagined it. She stopped an arm's length away. Up close, the cold I'd felt earlier made sense. Not dead cold. Not undead. Controlled cold. You don't understand what you've done, she said. Then explain it, I replied. Before this gets worse. A corner of her mouth twitched. It already has. She reached out. Not toward my throat, not toward my face, but toward my left wrist. I flinched before I could stop myself. Her fingers brushed the edge of my sleeve. Pain exploded. White hot. Searing. Like someone had poured molten wire under my skin. I gasped and staggered back, clutching my wrist. The tattoo burned. Not like fire. Like awakening. Blue light flared beneath my skin, tracing the geometric lines, pulsing outward in sharp, rhythmic beats. The bar lights flickered violently. The music skipped, warped, then cut out entirely. What the hell? Naomi started. The generator screamed. Not coughed. Screamed. The purple neon sign outside buzzed so loudly it rattled the walls. Bottles clinked and jumped on the shelves. The woman's eyes went wide. For the first time, real fear cracked her composure. No, she whispered. That's impossible. The tattoo wasn't just glowing now. It was projecting. Holographic lines of blue light spilled out from my wrist, forming shapes in the air, rotating, shifting, mapping something I couldn't see. The scavengers backed away in unison. People shouted. Someone fell. The medic ducked behind the bar. I dropped to one knee, teeth clenched, the pain crawling up my arm like electricity searching for a ground. What did you do to me? I demanded. I did nothing, she said sharply. You did this. She stared at my arm like it was a weapon she hadn't known was loaded. Nocturne blood, she murmured. It reacted. Reacted to what? Naomi shouted. The woman didn't answer her. She grabbed my arm. Her touch was ice, and suddenly the pain stopped. Not faded. Stopped. The glow steadied, dimmed to a controlled pulse. She leaned close, her voice barely audible over the alarms. Listen to me carefully, she said, because if I'm right, we are out of time. Then talk, I snapped. Her eyes flicked toward the bar, toward the people staring, panicking, whispering. Not here. She yanked me toward her with strength that ignored physics. Hey, Naomi protested. You don't just lock the bar, the woman barked. Ground the patrons. Midnight is early. That made everyone freeze. Because on Dusk Ridge, midnight wasn't a metaphor. It was a threat. The wind outside howled louder, metal screaming as the station shuddered. The midnight search. Electronics went haywire. Shadows lengthened, bending in ways shadows weren't supposed to bend. People who stayed standing too long sometimes forgot their own names. The woman dragged me toward the back hallway. I dug my heels in. You don't get to kidnap me after starting a riot. She turned, eyes blazing. You lit a beacon, she hissed. Everything that hunts my kind can feel you now. What? Naomi shouted. The woman didn't slow down. If we stay here, they will come. If we argue, they will arrive sooner. She shoved me through the hallway door. Red emergency lights flicked on, bathing the corridor in blood-colored glow. The station shook again, harder this time. Naomi's voice echoed behind us. Don, where are you going? I twisted back. Lock the bar. Ground everyone. And you? She yelled. I looked at the woman dragging me deeper into the station. I'm negotiating with my own bad decisions. The hallway ended at my cabin. A reinforced blast door. Old military surplus. The only part of the station I'd overbuilt. Open it, she ordered. I don't even know your name, I said, fumbling with the keypad. And you just tried to kill a customer. My name doesn't matter, she snapped. If you don't open that door in 5 seconds, the surge will liquefy your brain because that thing on your arm is screaming into the dark like a dinner bell. The walls trembled. Shadows stretched across the floor, twisting, overlapping, wrong. I punched in the code. The door hissed open. She shoved me inside and slammed it shut behind us. But she didn't stop there. She pulled a small silver device from her belt. Smooth, oval, pulsing softly, and jammed it into the lock interface. Liquid metal bled out, fusing with the steel. The lock panel flashed violet. Biometric override. High-end. Not alliance. Not federation. I stared. That tech isn't legal anywhere. She leaned against the door, breathing hard now. Not panicked, but strained. Like she'd been holding herself together by force of will alone. It's mine, she said. The glow on my arm faded to a dull ember. The silence inside the cabin was heavy. I rubbed my wrist. The skin felt hot, feverish. You broke my thong, she said again. But this time, it wasn't a threat. It was grief. I grabbed a towel from the sink and tossed it to her. You're bleeding. She caught it but didn't use it. Her fingers traced the gap in her teeth, eyes distant. You broke my night, she whispered. I leaned back against the desk, exhaustion hitting me all at once. Lady, you walked into my bar, your escort nearly got someone killed, and now my arm thinks it's a lighthouse. You're going to start explaining. She looked at me then, really looked, at the scars, the posture, the controlled violence I'd tried to bury behind a counter and cheap gin. Her voice softened. Very well, she said. But understand this, when I'm finished you won't wish you'd asked. Outside the door, the station groaned. The midnight surge had arrived. And whatever I'd just become, it was awake. The cabin lights dimmed as the midnight surge rolled over the station. Not darkness, pressure. The air itself felt heavier, like it was being pressed flat by an invisible hand. The emergency strips along the floor pulsed red, casting long shadows that bent where they shouldn't. Outside the reinforced viewport, the plains of Duskridge were no longer plains. They were moving. Shadows didn't fall anymore. They flowed. I stood in the center of the cabin, one hand braced against the desk, the other still tingling from the afterburn of the tattoo. The woman, the vampire princess apparently, leaned against the blast door, her breathing slow and controlled again, as if fear had been catalogued and shelved. She removed her glove. The blood was darker than it should have been. Not black, but deep, viscous, like oil catching light. She pressed the towel to her mouth finally, then lowered it just enough for me to see the damage. The missing thong. Clean break. Surgical. The kind of fracture that doesn't heal right. You didn't just break a tooth, she said quietly. You shattered a conduit. I stared. It's a thong. It's lineage, she replied. It's history. It's function. She pushed herself off the door and crossed the room. The way she moved was different now, less predatory, more deliberate. Careful. Wounded things move carefully. She sat on the edge of the cot, elbows on her knees, eyes fixed on the floor. My people are nocturne blood, she said. Predators if you want the crude version. But our fangs are not just weapons. They are conductors. Conductors of what? Bioenergy, she answered. Life residue. Ambient charge. The planet bleeds it everywhere. You just don't have the senses to taste it. She touched her jaw again, harder this time. Angry. A broken thong means reduced conduction, reduced status, reduced authority. So royal dentistry, I muttered. She looked up sharply. I raised a hand. Sorry. Her gaze lingered, searching my face. Then she exhaled slowly. In my house, she said. A broken fong is a declaration. It tells every rival that you are weakened. And out here, it tells hunters they were right to follow me. The station shuddered. Outside, the midnight surge intensified. The darkness pressed against the viewport, rippling with flashes. Ghost images bleeding through the black tide. Memories, faces, a child crying, a soldier screaming. I tore my eyes away. That thing on your arm, she said suddenly. How long have you had it? 10 years. Her head snapped up. 10? Woke up with it after a war, I said. Doctors said it was nerve damage. Told me to stop asking questions. She stood so fast the cot creaked. That's impossible. Get in line, I replied. She crossed to me and grabbed my wrist again, this time gentler. Her fingers traced the black lines of the tattoo like she was reading Braille. It's not ink, she whispered. It's living circuitry. The words hit harder than the punch had. Excuse me? She looked up, eyes blazing with a mix of awe and horror. That mark is a star map interface. A key. It doesn't activate without a catalyst. Which is? She swallowed. Nocturne blood. The memory clicked into place. The blood droplets. The sizzle. The glow. You touched me, I said slowly. Your blood hit it. Yes, she replied. And it woke up. The cabin lights flickered again, this time in perfect rhythm with the pulse in my arm. Thump, thump, thump. My heart matched it. You are broadcasting, she said, voice tight. Like a beacon. To who? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she went to the small sink and washed the blood from her hand. The water ran red, then clear. She stared at it as it disappeared down the drain. To everyone who wants me dead, she said finally. And to something much worse. The shadows outside surged violently, slamming against the window. I clenched my jaw. You're going to start explaining fast. She nodded once. My name is Soraya, she said. Third heir of the Nocturne crown. I blinked. Of course you are. She ignored the sarcasm. I am not supposed to be here. My home is light years away, sealed behind blood keys and star lattices. But someone broke the seal. The tattoo burned again, hot, insistent. And you, she said, have been carrying the map to that seal on your arm for a decade. The cabin shook harder. The surge outside screamed. You're telling me, I said carefully, that I've been working as a bartender on top of a cosmic lock, and nobody thought to mention it? They erased your memory, she said, or rewrote it. That tattoo requires a living nervous system to function. Someone turned you into a guardian without your consent. A memory surfaced, blurred, half-formed. A surgeon's face. A voice sang, hold him down. Pain. White. Endless. I shook my head. No. No, that's not. Your body remembers, she said softly. Even if you don't. The tattoo flared brighter. The cabin lights died completely. Only the blue glow from my arm remained, casting twisted shadows across the walls. A hologram erupted between us. Not static. A structure. The station. But wrong. It showed tunnels spiraling deep beneath the bar. Far deeper than any blueprint I'd ever seen. At the bottom of the spiral pulsed a single red light. Soraya stared at it. That's it, she whispered. The siphon chamber. Siphon. An ancient regulator, she said. My people built it to keep this planet stable. To contain the surge. My stomach dropped. You're telling me the midnight surge is artificial? It's a leak, she replied. Something is feeding on it. And that map is pointing straight to the wound. The hologram flickered. The power cut. Darkness slammed down like a fist. For a moment, the only sound was our breathing and the distant roar of the surge. Then, something moved. Not outside. Inside the station. Soraya stiffened. They felt it. Who? She grabbed my arm again, nails digging in. The hunters. The door shuddered as something heavy struck it from the other side. Once, twice. Naomi's voice crackled faintly through the comm panel embedded in the wall. Dawn, We've got company. Soraya met my eyes. Fear, sharp and real, finally stripped the royalty from her face. If they take you, she said, they will flay the map from your skin. And you, they'll mount my head as proof. Another on the door. Harder. I straightened, ignoring the pain in my shoulder, the burn in my arm, the screaming planet outside. Then we're not staying here, I said. Soraya blinked. What? I grabbed my jacket from the rack and slung it on. You dragged me into your cabin, I said. Now I'm dragging you somewhere worse. The door buckled. Metal screamed. I met her gaze steady. Whatever's under my bar, I said. We're going to it first. The surge roared like it approved. And somewhere deep below us, something answered. We didn't leave through the front. No sane person ever did once the midnight surge started. Soraya pulled me down the narrow service corridor behind the bar, past the storage racks and coolant pipes that rattled like bones under pressure. The emergency lights strobed red, painting her face in flashes. Princess 1 second, Predator the next. The station groaned again. Something heavy scraped along the outer hull. They're already here, she said. Earlier than they should be. Story of my life? I muttered, forcing my legs to keep up. My arm burned with every step, the tattoo pulsing faster now, brighter, like it was counting down to something neither of us wanted to reach zero. The pain wasn't random anymore. It had rhythm, purpose. We reached a maintenance hatch half hidden behind a crate of empty oxygen canisters. I stopped short. That leads under the bar, I said. Those tunnels were sealed before I bought the place. Soraya glanced back at me. That's why they chose this location. She keyed the panel. It didn't respond. I tried mine. The lock disengaged instantly. The tattoo flared. Soraya sucked in a sharp breath. It recognizes you. Great, I said. I've always wanted to be property. The hatch slid open, exhaling air that smelled old, metal, dust, and something else beneath it. Something ancient. We descended the ladder as the sounds of the bar faded behind us. Shouting, alarms, Naomi barking orders. I felt a pang in my chest at the thought of leaving them up there with hunters at the door. But Soraya's grip tightened on my arm. If we stay, she said, everyone dies. The tunnel opened into a chamber that shouldn't have existed. The walls weren't station metal. They were black stone fused with glowing veins, geometric patterns etched deep into the surface. The air hummed faintly, resonating with the pulse in my wrist. This isn't human, I whispered. No, Soraya replied. It's older. The tattoo surged. A wave of blue light rolled out from my arm, illuminating the chamber. Symbols ignited along the walls, answering the call like sleepers waking. Soraya stared. You're not just a key, she said slowly. You're a conduit. Difference. A key opens a door, she said. A conduit feeds it. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The siphon wasn't just drawing power from the planet. It was drawing it through me. The ground shook violently. Dust rained from the ceiling. They're breaching the bar, Soraya said. They'll follow the signal. I clenched my fist, the light intensifying until it spilled between my fingers. Then we shut it down. She hesitated. If we shut it down wrong, the surge eats the planet, I finished. I know. Silence fell between us, heavy and absolute. For the first time, Soraya looked uncertain. You don't understand what you're offering, she said. This much energy will burn you alive. Then make it quick, I replied. I've had worse shifts. Her lips parted, like she wanted to argue. Instead, she nodded. Very well, she said. But you don't do this alone. She stepped closer and pressed her bleeding palm against my glowing wrist. Pain detonated. Not sharp, vast. It was like being struck by lightning and drowning at the same time. Blue and violet light exploded outward, intertwining, stabilizing, slowing the pulse. The pain receded. The glow steadied. The chamber breathed. Soraya exhaled, shaken. Together, she whispered. It balances. Before I could respond, A new sound echoed down the tunnel. Boots. Metal on stone. Voices. "They've found us," I said. Soraya turned, eyes burning. "Then we move." We ran deeper into the ancient structure as gunfire rang out behind us, bolts of light scorching the stone. The hunters shouted, confident, excited. They knew they were close. The tunnel opened into a vast vertical shaft, spiraling downward into darkness. Platforms rotated slowly around the walls like the gears of a giant clock. At the center, far below, a red glow pulsed like a heart. The siphon. Soraya stopped at the edge, staring down. "Once we descend, there's no retreat." I looked at my arm, at the light, at the path that had apparently been waiting for me my entire life. I stepped forward. "Then let's stop pretending this was ever optional." Behind us, the hunters rounded the corner. Ahead of us, the heart of the planet waited. And the mark on my arm burned brighter than ever, ready to be used. The descent felt wrong. Not dangerous, wrong. The rotating platforms carried us downward in slow, grinding arcs, each one locking into place just long enough for us to jump before peeling away again. Gravity shifted subtly with every level, tugging at my stomach, disorienting my sense of balance. The red glow below us pulsed steadily, a mechanical heartbeat echoing up the shaft. Behind us, the hunters followed. Not charging, not shouting. They moved with patience, the kind that said they were certain prey only ran because it hadn't realized yet that escape was impossible. "Keep your left," Soraya said, gripping my wrist as the platform lurched. "The field distortion is stronger there." "You say that like this is normal," I replied, jumping as the next platform slid into place. "For my people," she said, landing lightly beside me. "It is." The tattoo burned hotter with every drop, the blue light bright enough now that I no longer needed the emergency strips to see. The walls responded to it, glyphs flaring to life, pathways unfolding like veins beneath stone. "You're guiding us," I said. She shook her head. "You are." The hunters fired. Bolts of white-hot energy slammed into the stone behind us, exploding fragments into the air. One shot clipped my shoulder, spinning me sideways. I grunted, nearly losing my footing. Soraya caught me with one arm, her strength shocking even now. "You're bleeding. Add it to the list." We dove onto another platform as the one above us shattered, molten stone raining down into the abyss. The shaft roared in protest. "Enough!" Soraya snarled. She turned, eyes glowing, and screamed. Not a word. Command. The sound tore through the shaft like a blade. The hunters staggered, clutching their heads, some collapsing outright. The stone itself vibrated, the glyphs flashing violet in response. I stared. "You could have done that the whole time?" "Yes," she said. "But it draws attention. I think we're past subtle." She didn't argue. We reached a sealed landing carved directly into the shaft wall. No controls. No visible seams. The tattoo flared violently. The door slid open. We tumbled into darkness. The door sealed behind us with a thunderous finality. For a moment, the only sound was our breathing. Then the lights came on. The room was not what I expected. Not a chamber. Not a shrine. A cabin. Compact. Reinforced. Designed for long-term habitation. Walls lined with storage panels, a narrow cot, a work table cluttered with instruments that looked half biological, half mechanical. And one viewport. It looked out not into space but into memory. Ghost images drifted past the reinforced glass. Cities burning, stars collapsing, oceans boiling into steam. Soraya released my arm and staggered to the cot, bracing herself. "This is one of my kind's sanctums," she said, breathing hard. "Built into the siphon complex. A place to monitor, to wait, to hide." I asked. She looked up sharply. "To endure." The tattoo dimmed slightly, as if recognizing shelter. I leaned against the wall, adrenaline draining fast. My shoulder throbbed. My arm felt like it had been rewired with live current. "They're regrouping," I said. "They won't stop." "No," Soraya agreed. "And now they know you're not just a rumor." I laughed weakly. I miss being a bartender. She reached into a storage panel and pulled out a small vial filled with softly glowing blue liquid. Sit, she ordered. I did. She knelt in front of me and poured the liquid onto my wound. It burned, then numbed, then knit the flesh together with unsettling efficiency. Bioregenerative compound, she said. It will keep you alive. Comforting. She worked in silence for a moment, then spoke without looking up. When I dragged you here, she said, it wasn't just to protect you. I raised an eyebrow. I feel honored. You are the key, she continued. But keys are useless without someone who knows the lock. She finished sealing the wound and sat back on her heels. They took my home, she said quietly. My people are scattered, hunted. The siphon was meant to protect worlds like this one. Now it's a weapon. And you think I can fix it? I think, she said, meeting my gaze, that you were never meant to be alone. The words landed heavier than she intended. I looked away, staring at the shifting memories beyond the glass. You said someone rewrote me. Yes. And you trust me? She hesitated. Then, I trust what you've chosen so far. The hunters' voices echoed faintly through the walls, muffled, frustrated. They'll breach eventually, I said. Yes, she replied, which is why we need to move deeper. I pushed myself to my feet, ignoring the ache in my bones. Then tell me the rest. She stood as well, every trace of hesitation gone. The siphon's core requires a guardian, she said, a living interface to regulate the flow. My stomach dropped. And if that guardian dies? The surge consumes the planet. I met her eyes. And if the guardian lives? She swallowed. They never leave. Silence stretched between us. Outside the cabin, something heavy struck the door. Once, twice. They're running out of patience, I said. Soraya stepped closer, placing her hand over my glowing wrist. So are we, she replied. The cabin lights shifted, the floor humming as a new passageway opened beneath our feet. Downward, deeper, toward the heart. She didn't let go of my arm. Not when the floor began to descend. Not when the hunters finally breached the outer seal. Not when the memory storm outside the viewport intensified. For the first time since this started, I understood something clearly. This wasn't a rescue. It was a binding. And whatever waited below, it had been waiting for us. The floor descended without a sound. No grinding. No mechanical protest. Just a smooth, steady drop like gravity itself had decided to cooperate. The cabin lights dimmed to a soft amber glow, and the memory storm outside the viewport faded, replaced by solid stone rushing past us in slow motion. Soraya finally released my wrist. The moment she did, the tattoo pulsed harder, like it missed her already. I flexed my fingers. So, I said, you're a vampire princess. I'm apparently a biological access card. And there's a planet-eating machine under my bar. She gave a weak smile. When you put it like that, it sounds dramatic. I run a bar, I replied. Drama comes with the liquor license. The floor slowed, then stopped. A soft chime echoed through the cabin. Ahead of us, a wall of black stone slid aside, revealing a long corridor lit by thin lines of violet light embedded in the floor. The air was colder here, cleaner, charged. This is as far as humans were ever meant to come, Soraya said. Story of my life? I muttered, stepping forward anyway. The corridor walls were carved with images. Tall, slender figures with glowing eyes, standing beside stars and machines that wrapped around planets like veins. Some of the figures held children. Others held weapons. All of them wore the same sigil that now burned on my arm. You built all this, I said. Yes, she replied, but not for conquest, for balance. We reached a circular chamber at the end of the corridor. In its center stood a raised dais, empty except for a shallow indentation shaped exactly like a forearm. I didn't like that. Soraya stopped beside me. My people didn't call it the siphon, she said. That's the crude translation. We called it the listener. The listener to what? To suffering, she said. To fear. to the psychic residue that builds up in places where life struggles to survive. I thought of Dusk Ridge, the wind, the violence, the forgotten dead. So the surge. Is the listener overflowing? She finished. Something is forcing it to consume more than it can process. And the hunters? Her jaw tightened. They are not just mercenaries, she said. They are archivists of power. They strip civilizations, harvest relics, and sell control to the highest bidder. Who hired them? She met my eyes. Someone who knows what you are. A chill crawled up my spine. I don't even know what I am. You are a guardian construct, she said gently. A living interface grown around a human mind. The words hit harder than any punch. No, I said. I was born. Yes, she agreed. You were. But after Aunt Eris, your body was repurposed. Your memories were curated. I remembered the hospital, the lights, the voice telling me I was lucky. What happens if they take me? I asked. They remove the interface, she said. You die. And the listener goes feral. The chamber shook slightly, distant explosions echoing through the stone. They're close, I said. Yes, she replied. Which is why you need to hear this now. She stepped onto the dais. My bloodline was bound to protect the listener, she said. But we could not control it directly, only guide it. She gestured to my arm. You can. The indentation on the dais began to glow faintly. This is where the guardian binds, she said. Once you place your arm there, the listener will recognize you fully. And then, she said softly, you become the lock. I laughed. Came out brittle. You're telling me the price of saving everyone upstairs is never leaving this hole in the ground. Her silence was answer enough. The hunters' voices echoed closer now, clearer, confident. You knew, I said. You dragged me here knowing this was the endgame. Yes, she admitted. And I hate myself for it. I looked at the dais, at the place shaped for me. I spent 10 years pouring drinks because I wanted to stop fighting, I said. I wanted walls, rules, a place where nothing followed me. She stepped closer. You still can have that. Not if I become a door. The tattoo flared violently, projecting a partial hologram above the dais, star maps, energy flows, warning symbols blinking red. The listener was waking. Soraya grabbed my hand again, grounding the surge. There may be another way, she said quickly. A temporary bind. Risky. Unstable. Risky how? It could kill us both, she said. Or it could free you. I met her eyes. Why didn't you lead with that? Because, she said, voice breaking just slightly. I wasn't sure you'd choose it. The first hunter appeared at the far end of the corridor, weapon raised. Then another. Then 5 more. They stopped when they saw the chamber, saw the dais, saw me. One of them spoke into a calm target acquired. Interface confirmed. Soraya stepped in front of me, fangs bared, eyes blazing. Your fight is with me, she snarled. The lead hunter smiled. With respect, Your Highness. Our fight is with history. I felt the listener pulse beneath my feet. I took a breath. Get behind me, I said. Soraya turned. What? I said get behind me. She hesitated, then obeyed. I stepped onto the dais. The indentation flared bright blue. The listener listened. The hunters raised their weapons. And for the first time since the war, I stopped running from what I was. The moment my arm touched the dais, the listener screamed. Not a sound, a pressure. It slammed into my skull like a tidal wave made of memories that weren't mine. Cities I'd never seen burned behind my eyes. Stars collapsed into themselves. I tasted fear so old it had fossilized. Above us, somewhere far beyond stone and steel, the bar went quiet. Too quiet. Soraya cried out and grabbed my shoulders. Her grip the only thing anchoring me to my body. Don't let it pull you in, she shouted. It will show you everything it has ever heard. I gasped. I don't know how to stop it. You don't stop it, she said. You filter it. The hunters fired. White-hot energy slammed into an invisible barrier inches from my face, dispersing like mist. The listener had raised a shield around the dais, around me. The lead hunter swore. He's sinking faster than predicted. My arm burned. Not pain, alignment. The chamber walls lit up, symbols flowing like liquid light, and suddenly I wasn't underground anymore. I was everywhere. I saw the bar from above, the broken neon sign buzzing, the dusty windows rattling. Inside, Naomi had overturned tables, shouting orders, dragging people onto grounded mats as the surge hit full force. The shadows came alive. They didn't just stretch. They reached. A miner screamed as his reflection peeled away from his body and stared back at him with empty eyes. The medic collapsed, clutching her head, whispering names she didn't recognize. The surge wasn't killing. It was rewriting. Too much, I groaned. It's too much. Soraya pressed her forehead to mine. Focus on one thing, one place. Anchor yourself. My bar, I said instantly. The listener responded. The vision zoomed. I felt the bar like it was part of my nervous system. The cracked floor plates, the dented counter, the generator coughing in the back room. I felt every person inside it like pins of warmth in a sea of cold. And I felt the monster outside. It wasn't a creature. It was absence. A crawling, hungry void that slid across the plains, devouring psychic residue like a scavenger stripping bones. Every step it took erased something, memories, echoes, meaning. It was feeding on the surge. And it was learning. Soraya gasped. It's adapting. Yes, I said. And it knows where I am. The hunters realized it at the same time. Pull back, the leader shouted. The surge is spiking. This place will collapse. Too late. The cavern shook violently, chunks of stone tearing free and vanishing into nothing before they could hit the ground. The listener's heartbeat thundered through my bones. Thump, thump, thump. Above us, the bar's front window shattered inward. Not from impact, but from absence. A perfect silhouette burned into the glass where a man had been standing moments before. He was gone. No blood, no body, just a shadow scorched into steel. Naomi screamed. I felt it like a knife in my chest. No, I snarled. Not them. I pushed back. Not with strength. With refusal. I thought of the bar on a quiet night. Music low. Naomi complaining. Someone laughing without fear. I forced the listener to remember why it was built. The surge faltered. Just for a second. The monster outside recoiled, shrieking without sound. Soraya's eyes widened. You're doing it. I'm holding it, I said through clenched teeth. But I can't hold it forever. The hunters didn't waste the pause. They rushed the dais. Soraya moved first. She launched herself into them, fangs bared, violet light blazing from her eyes. She wasn't elegant now. She was furious. She struck with surgical brutality, breaking arms, crushing throats, hurling bodies into the dark. Not killing, disabling, protecting me. I felt every second stretch. The listener pulsed harder. The monster outside pressed closer, testing the weakened barrier. Then, a voice cut through everything. Not from the cavern. From the bar. Dawn. Naomi's voice echoed through the listener, raw and desperate. We can't hold them. Something's at the door. I saw it. The front entrance. Darkness pooled there, thicker than shadow, rippling like liquid night. Pressed against the door, probing, learning. The monster had found a mouth. Soraya slammed a hunter to the ground and turned to me. If it breaches the bar, it feeds, I finished, on everyone. The listener screamed again. The hunters retreated, realizing the prize was no longer worth the cost. But the monster didn't retreat. It lunged. The bar doors bowed inward. Naomi braced herself. I made a decision. Pull me out, I said. Soraya stared. If we break the bind now, the surge goes critical, I said. I know. But if I stay in, I continued, that thing gets smarter. She hesitated only a fraction of a second. Then she grabbed my arm and ripped me free from the dais. Agony tore through me as the connection severed. The listener howled. The shield collapsed. The cavern lights died. We were plunged into darkness as the surge outside roared to life, angrier than ever. Soraya caught me as I fell. "We bought them time," she whispered. Above us, the bar still stood. Barely. And the monster, it was no longer searching. It was waiting. Silence followed the severing of the bind. Not peace aftermath. The cavern lay in near-total darkness, lit only by the faint, wounded glow of the glyphs retreating back into stone. Dust drifted slowly through the air like ash after a firestorm. Somewhere above us, the bar still stood, but the listener had gone quiet in the way a predator does when it stops thrashing and starts thinking. Soraya held me upright, one arm braced under my shoulder. "Can you stand?" she asked. "Define stand," I muttered. She snorted despite herself and half-dragged me toward the corridor. My arm felt wrong now, heavy, dull, like a limb that had gone to sleep but hadn't decided whether to wake up again. We hadn't gone 10 steps when the lights came back on. Not the violet glow of nocturne tech. Clean, white, precise, human. Boots echoed from the far end of the corridor. Measured, unhurried. Not the chaotic rush of mercenaries, but the confident cadence of someone who knew the fight was already won. Soraya stiffened. "That's not them." I didn't ask who them was. I already knew. A figure stepped into the light. He was tall, but not imposing in the way brutes are imposing. He wore a tailored combat coat, dark and immaculate despite the chaos, its fabric swallowing light rather than reflecting it. His gloves were pale, his boots spotless. A man who didn't run. A man who didn't need to. Behind him, 6 hunters fanned out, weapons lowered but ready. Professionals. Not scavengers chasing a bounty. The man stopped a respectful distance away and inclined his head slightly. "Princess Soraya," he said. His voice was smooth, cultured, polite in the way knives are polite before they cut. "It has been some time." Her grip on me tightened. "Baron Calder," she said, venom layered carefully beneath royal composure. "I see you're still wearing stolen titles." Calder smiled faintly. "I see you're still hiding behind ruined worlds." He turned his attention to me, and the air shifted. His eyes, gray, sharp, ancient in a way that had nothing to do with age, locked onto my left arm. The tattoo pulsed once in response. "There you are," he said softly. "The key that forgot he was a door." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the surge. "You've got 5 seconds," I said hoarsely. "Then you're turning around." Calder chuckled. "Ah, the bartender still believes he has leverage." He raised a hand casually. The hunters didn't fire. They activated. Energy fields flared, cutting off the corridor behind us. The stone itself reconfigured, sealing exits with mechanical indifference. Soraya hissed under her breath. "You've been here before." "Many times," Calder replied. "This complex has been on my acquisition list for decades." "You killed worlds for less," she snapped. "Yes," he agreed calmly. "And I slept very well afterward." He stepped closer, stopping just outside arm's reach. "You did admirably," Calder said to me, synchronizing with the listener without formal training. "Most guardians break within seconds." "Lucky me," I growled. "Not luck," he corrected. "Design." My stomach twisted. "You helped make me," I said. Calder's smile widened. "Helped? No. I funded the program." Soraya turned on him. "You used human soldiers." "Volunteers," Calder interrupted smoothly. "Desperate men with nowhere left to go. I simply gave them purpose." Rage surged up my spine, hot and violent. "You rewrote me." "Yes," Calder said, unbothered. "But you kept the parts that matter. The guilt, the need to protect. Very useful instincts in a lock." He gestured to my arm. "That interface was never meant to be idle. It was meant to respond to suffering, which makes you wonderfully predictable." Soraya stepped in front of me, fangs flashing. "Step away from him." Calder's gaze never left mine. "I didn't come to fight," he said. "I came to collect." One of the hunters placed a small device on the ground. It unfolded, projecting a shimmering containment field, designed to strip biointerfaces cleanly from nervous systems. Soraya inhaled sharply. "That will kill him," she said. Calder shrugged. "I'll lose the container, not the contents." I clenched my fists, feeling the tattoo stir weakly, like an exhausted animal. "Why not kill us both and be done with it?" I asked. "Because," Calder replied, "you're more valuable alive." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "And because the monster outside is listening." The ground trembled. The surge roared distantly, angry and confused, like a beast denied its meal. Calder straightened. "You see, bartender, the listener isn't the real prize." My heart sank. "The surge is a language," Calder continued, "a broadcast medium, a way to imprint memory, obedience, belief onto entire populations. You want to control it," Soraya spat. "I want to aim it," Calder said pleasantly. "Why conquer cities when you can rewrite them?" I felt sick. "You break the siphon," I said, "and you kill this planet." Calder nodded. "Acceptable loss." The hunters advanced. Soraya grabbed my wrist. "If they take you." "I know," I said quietly. "They end everything." I met Calder's gaze. "You're afraid," I said suddenly. His smile faltered just a fraction. "You're afraid the surge will choose someone else." Silence. Then Calder laughed, sharp, humorless. "Clever," he said. "That's the human part talking." He raised his hand. "Take him." Soraya moved like lightning. She slammed into the nearest hunter, ripping the weapon from his grip and shattering his knee in one brutal motion. Another hunter went down under her elbow, throat crushed just enough to drop him unconscious. I surged forward with her, adrenaline overriding pain. I grabbed a fallen rifle, firing on instinct, controlled bursts, disabling shots. Years of muscle memory woke up screaming. Calder stepped back calmly, watching. The fight was fast, violent, over too quickly. Soraya stood breathing hard amid fallen hunters. Only Calder remained, unarmed, unshaken. He clapped once. "Excellent," he said. "You still have teeth, princess." His gaze flicked to my arm. "But you're exhausted." He snapped his fingers. The containment device activated. A pulse of energy slammed into my chest, dropping me to my knees. The tattoo flared violently, screaming in protest as the field wrapped around me. Soraya screamed my name. Calder knelt in front of me, eye level. "You could have been a god," he said softly. "Instead, you chose to be a bartender." I spat blood. "Worst career advice I ever got." He smiled. Then, the ground ruptured. Not above us. Below. A roar tore through the cavern, ancient and furious. The monster outside had found a new path. Calder froze. For the first time, real uncertainty cracked his composure. Soraya looked up, eyes blazing. "You waited too long," she said. The listener had been listening, and it was no longer neutral. The cavern screamed. Stone cracked like bone under pressure, fissures racing across the floor as if something beneath it was clawing its way upward. The air went cold, so cold it burned, and the lights flickered between human white and nocturne violet, caught between systems that no longer agreed on who was in control. I was still on my knees when the containment field collapsed. Not because Calder released it, because something ate it. The energy shimmer didn't shatter or overload. It simply vanished, swallowed by the darkness seeping up through the cracks in the floor. Calder stared at the empty space where his device had been. "Interesting," he murmured. Soraya didn't wait. She grabbed me under the arm and hauled me to my feet just as the ground split open behind us. A wave of black nothingness surged upward. Not liquid, not smoke. Absence given motion. It screamed without sound, bending the light around it like reality itself was trying to look away. "The monster isn't outside anymore," I said hoarsely. "No," Soraya replied. "It followed the signal." Calder backed away, boots scraping against stone. For the first time since he'd entered the chamber, his voice sharpened. "This was not part of the model. You built your model on stolen blood and broken minds," Soraya snapped. "You never understood what you were calling." The darkness surged again, tendrils licking the air, tasting it. I felt the listener react. Deep, slow, defensive. The tattoo on my arm flared weakly, struggling to reassert connection, like a muscle cramping after overuse. "We can't fight that," I said. Calder scoffed. "Everything can be fought." I shook my head. "Not this. It doesn't exist the way we do." Another tremor ripped through the cavern. One of Calder's remaining hunters was too slow. 1 second he was running, the next he was gone, erased so completely the air rushed in to fill the space he'd occupied. No scream, no body, just absence. Calder stopped smiling. Soraya met my eyes. "We have 3 options. Run," I said. "Fight," she added. "Or bargain," I finished. Calder laughed sharply. "You think you can negotiate with a psychic singularity?" I looked at the darkness, at the way it responded to the pulse in my arm, at the way it hesitated, not recoiling but listening. "I don't think it's a singularity," I said. "I think it's starving." Soraya inhaled slowly. The listener was meant to feed it, regulate the excess. "And someone turned off the regulator," I said, eyes on Calder. He spread his hands. "Progress requires sacrifice." The monster surged closer, drawn to the rising tension, to the unfiltered psychic noise of fear and ambition. I stepped forward. Soraya grabbed my arm. "If you try to bind again, it could kill you." "If I don't," I replied, "it kills everyone." Calder shook his head. "You're thinking too small. Let it feed. Then control what remains." "That's not control," I said. "That's extinction with paperwork." The darkness paused, right in front of me, close enough that the air felt hollow, like my lungs couldn't quite find resistance. I felt it then. Not hunger, loneliness. It wasn't a creature. It was a wound, a place where too many memories had nowhere to go. "I can talk to it," I said quietly. Calder barked a laugh. "You're delirious." Soraya stared at me. "Can you?" I closed my eyes. I thought of the bar, the neon sign, Naomi's voice, people drinking not because they were happy, but because they were still here. "I don't know," I admitted, "but it's already talking to me." I stepped fully into the glow. The tattoo flared blue, then white, pain ripping through my arm as the connection snapped back into place. The listener answered, weak but present, like an old machine grateful to be touched by someone who remembered why it existed. The darkness surged, then stopped. The pressure shifted. Not gone. Focused. I opened my eyes and saw it. Not with sight, but with understanding. A vast field of psychic residue. Overloaded, abandoned, driven feral by neglect. "You don't want to destroy," I whispered. "You want to be held." The darkness trembled. Soraya's breath caught. Calder's voice hardened. "This is absurd. End it." He raised his pistol and fired. Soraya moved, but not fast enough. The shot hit my shoulder. Pain exploded. I staggered, but didn't fall. The darkness reacted instantly. Not in anger, in judgment. It surged past me, ignoring Soraya, ignoring the chamber, straight for Calder. His confidence shattered. "No, wait." The darkness didn't erase him. It reflected him. Calder screamed as memories ripped free. Every betrayal, every calculated death, every lie he'd told himself to sleep at night. They played back into him at once, amplified, inescapable. He collapsed, clawing at his own head. The monster didn't kill him. It left him, empty. The chamber fell silent except for Calder's broken sobbing. Soraya stared at me, eyes wide. "You didn't bargain." I shook, blood soaking my sleeve. "I didn't have to." I looked at the darkness as it receded, settling back into the fissures, calmer now, contained but not sealed. "I offered it something it hadn't had in a long time," I said. "Choice." The listener pulsed faintly beneath our feet. Soraya stepped closer, steadying me. "You can't do that again," she said softly. "It will cost you everything." I met her gaze. "Then we'd better make it count." The darkness didn't leave. It settled. like a storm cloud deciding it wasn't finished with the land yet. The fissures in the cavern floor sealed themselves slowly, stone knitting back together with a sound like deep, distant breathing. The air grew warmer, not safe but survivable. The listener's pulse slowed beneath our feet, no longer frantic, no longer silent. Restless, Calder lay curled on the stone, eyes open and empty, mouthing words that never reached sound. Whatever the darkness had shown him, it had taken everything he'd used to call himself. Soraya didn't look at him. She was watching me. Blood ran down my arm, dripping from my fingers onto the glowing lines of the floor. The tattoo flickered weakly, light stuttering like a dying star. "You're burning out," she said. "I know," I replied. My voice sounded distant, like it was echoing down a long tunnel. "But it's not done with me." The listener answered with a low hum that vibrated through my bones. Soraya's eyes widened. "It's opening a deeper channel." "Deeper than this?" I asked. She nodded slowly. "There is another layer. One even my people feared." The chamber shifted. The dais cracked down the middle, retracting like a jaw opening wide. Beneath it, a spiral staircase descended into darkness so complete it swallowed the light spilling from above. Cold air rushed up from below, carrying the smell of old stone, ancient metal, and something else, something alive. Soraya took a step back. "This wasn't meant for us." I smiled weakly. "Story of my life." The listener pulsed once, hard. The message was clear. "Go." I took a step forward. Soraya grabbed my wrist, her fingers trembling. "If we go down there, you may not come back as you." "I don't know what me is anymore," I said. "But I know what happens if I stay." She searched my face, violet eyes burning with fear she refused to name. Then she nodded. "Then I go with you," she said. We descended. Each step down the spiral felt heavier than the last, like gravity itself was increasing with depth. The walls were smoother here, older, etched with symbols that predated language. Patterns meant to be felt, not read. My vision blurred. The tattoo brightened. And then the staircase ended. We stepped into a vast chamber that dwarfed everything above it. At its center floated a massive sphere of black glass threaded with blue and violet light. It rotated slowly, suspended in a lattice of energy that hummed with impossible power. Inside the sphere, movement, not reflections, not shadows, people, thousands of them, flickering images of faces, memories, emotions, fear, love, regret, hope, cycling endlessly like a storm trapped in glass. I staggered. "Those are echoes," Soraya whispered. "Every mind the listener has ever touched." The weight hit me all at once. The surge wasn't a monster. It was a graveyard, a containment of what the universe didn't know where to put. "No," I said. "This isn't balance. This is hoarding." "The listener was never meant to be permanent," Soraya said. "It was meant to be guided, emptied, released." I felt the truth settle in my chest like a stone. "And the guardians were meant to die," she said softly, "to pass the burden on." The sphere pulsed. A projection flared to life in front of us. A man appeared, tall, scarred, with my face. "My name was Donald Vance," the projection said calmly. "If you're seeing this, then the listener is failing." My breath hitched. "I was the first," the projection continued. "The prototype. The one who volunteered because I couldn't live with what I'd done." I stared at him, at me. "You are not a copy," the projection said, as if answering my thoughts. "You are a continuation, a chance to do better." Soraya looked at me, understanding dawning. "They didn't erase you," she whispered. "They built on you." The projection gestured to the sphere. "The listener is full, cannot contain what it has gathered. It must be taught how to let go." "And how do we do that?" I asked. The projection met my gaze. "You teach it what you learned too late," it said. "Mercy." The sphere trembled. The darkness stirred again, but not angrily. Expectantly, I stepped forward, placing my hand against the glass. Pain flared, but it didn't consume me. I felt them then. Every memory, Every loss. Every life that had brushed the surge and been taken. I felt Naomi laughing, a miner crying, a child calling for a parent who never came home. I fell to my knees. Soraya caught me. "You don't have to carry this alone," she said fiercely. "Not anymore." I looked up at her. "Then help me," I whispered. She didn't hesitate. She pressed her forehead to mine, her broken fang glowing faintly blue-violet. Her bloodline answered the call, her biology harmonizing with the listener's field. The sphere shuddered. Light cracked through the black glass like dawn through night. The echoes inside began to move, not trapped now but flowing. Upward, outward, released. The listener wasn't screaming anymore. It was exhaling. Far above us, the surge softened. The shadows loosened their grip. The planet breathed, collapsed, spent. Soraya held me, her arms strong and warm and real. "It's not over," she said quietly. I nodded weakly. It never is. But for the first time since I'd opened that bar, the darkness was no longer hungry. The release didn't end the danger. Changed it. The chamber hummed with unfamiliar quiet. The kind that comes after something enormous has shifted and the universe hasn't decided yet what that means. Cracks of light still threaded the great sphere, echoes drifting upward like dying embers. But the listener was no longer consuming. It was open. I lay on the cold stone floor, chest rising and falling in shallow, uneven breaths. Every nerve felt scorched, wrung dry. My arm was numb now. Not asleep numb, but distant, like it belonged to someone else. Soraya knelt beside me, one hand braced on the ground, the other steady on my shoulder. "You're still here," she said, more to herself than to me. "Disappointed," I croaked. Her lips twitched, then pressed flat as she looked away. "Relieved." The sphere pulsed once, softly, like a tired heart. Then a sound cut through the quiet. Clapping. Slow. Deliberate. Measured. Soraya's head snapped up. Her body shifted instantly, predator alert. One knee forward, shoulders squared between me and the sound. "Stay down," she whispered. From the far edge of the chamber, a figure stepped out of the shadows. Not Calder. Someone worse. He wore no armor, no regal coat. Just a simple dark suit. Unmarked. Unadorned. His face was ordinary, too ordinary. The kind of face that vanished in a crowd. The kind you never remembered until it ruined your life. Behind him, 3 hunters emerged, weapons trained on Soraya. "Beautiful," the man said calmly. "Truly beautiful." Soraya bared her fangs. "You are not part of this hunt." He smiled mildly. "On the contrary, I've been part of it from the beginning." He looked down at me. "And so have you, Donald Vance." My blood ran cold. "I don't know you," I said. "No," he agreed. "You wouldn't. I made sure of that." Soraya snarled. "Speak quickly. Or don't speak at all." The man raised a placating hand. "I'm not your enemy, Princess. If I were, this chamber would already be ash." He gestured to the sphere. "What you've done here is impressive. Catastrophic for some of my colleagues, but impressive nonetheless." "You funded Calder," I said slowly. "You funded the Guardian program." "Yes," he replied. "Calder was useful, ambitious, replaceable." The word landed heavy. "You rewrote me," I said. He tilted his head. "We offered you a chance to keep living. You turned me into a leash." He sighed. "We turned you into a solution." Soraya lunged. The hunters fired. A net of shimmering energy snapped around her midair, slamming her to the ground hard enough to crack stone. She cried out, muscles locking as the field constricted. "No!" I shouted, trying to push myself up. Pain exploded through my spine as one of the hunters drove a boot into my chest, pinning me down. The man crouched in front of me, studying my face with professional curiosity. "You surprised us," he said. "You weren't supposed to care this much." "People aren't tools," I growled. He smiled faintly. "Everything is a tool. The question is whether it knows it." Soraya struggled against the field, snarling, eyes blazing. Touch him again, and I will peel you apart molecule by molecule. The man glanced at her. You won't, he said gently, because you've already lost. He tapped a device on his wrist. The chamber trembled. Far above, the listener pulsed sharply, out of rhythm. I felt it like a hook yanked through my chest. What did you do? I gasped. Re-engaged the failsafe, he said. You released the pressure, but you didn't close the loop. The sphere darkened. The cracks of light sealed. The echoes inside stilled. The listener didn't scream. It locked. Soraya's face drained of color. That seal requires a guardian. Yes, the man agreed. And we have one. The hunters hauled me upright. My legs buckled, but they held me anyway, gripping my arms hard enough to bruise. You can't, Soraya whispered. He'll die. Eventually, the man said. But first he'll stabilize the system. And that's all we need. I laughed weakly. You really don't learn. He leaned closer. Oh, I learn very well. That's why I'm still alive. He turned to Soraya. You were a variable, he said. An inconvenience. But you helped us narrow the solution. He nodded to the hunters. Take the guardian. They dragged me toward a dark opening at the far end of the chamber. A transport gate I hadn't seen activate. Soraya screamed my name. I twisted in their grip, forcing myself to look at her. Listen to me, I shouted. Don't stop. Don't let them freeze it again. Tears streaked her face. Not blood, not rage. Fear. I won't, she vowed. I swear it. The man stepped between us as the gate flared to life. You should know, he said quietly to me. This isn't a prison. What is it then? I asked. He smiled. A continuation. The gate swallowed us whole. And for the first time since I'd woken up in that field hospital, I didn't know where I was being taken. The gate closed behind them with a sound like the universe snapping shut. Soraya remained on the chamber floor long after the light faded, long after the hum of the transport died away. The containment field around her dissolved seconds later, its purpose fulfilled. She did not rise immediately. Her fingers dug into the stone, cracking it. For a heartbeat, she let herself feel it. The fear, the failure, the unbearable emptiness where he had been. Then she stood. The chamber responded. The ancient walls flared violet, recognizing bloodline authority that had not been exercised here in centuries. The listener trembled, not in panic, but in attention. Soraya wiped the tears from her face with the back of her hand. No more running, she said aloud. Her voice echoed. Not back at her, but downward. Something answered. Hidden doors slid open along the chamber walls, revealing alcoves sealed behind crystal panes. Inside them lay figures, nocturne warriors, preserved in suspended stasis, armor intact, weapons folded across chests like ceremonial offerings. An exile's army. She hadn't known they were here, but her blood did. She approached the nearest alcove and placed her palm against the glass. I am Soraya of the Third Blood, she said clearly. Last free heir of the Nocturne Crown. The glass shimmered. I call the old vow, she continued. The vow we swore when the listener was born. The chamber shook. One by one, the stasis fields disengaged. Eyes opened. Violet, crimson, silver. Warriors stepped forward, silent, disciplined, deadly. They knelt as one. We hear you, your highness, the foremost said. Soraya closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, grief was gone. What remained was fire. They took the guardian, she said. They sealed the listener. They think they have one. A ripple of restrained fury passed through the warriors. They are wrong. She turned toward the holographic projection still flickering faintly above the sphere. With a gesture, she expanded it: star charts, transport routes, hidden relays. The hunters are not a single faction, she said. They are a network. They cut out pieces of the universe and sell control to those who fear chaos. She clenched her fist. We will give them something to fear. The warriors rose. Weapons unfolded. Armor sealed. Above them, the listener pulsed once. Slow, approving. Soraya placed her hand against the sphere. You wanted mercy, she whispered. I gave it. Her voice hardened. They answered with chains. She turned away. Prepare the fleet, she ordered. We take back what they stole. The transport facility was white, sterile, endlessly bright. I lay strapped to a reclining restraint, wrists and ankles locked in place by bands of humming energy. The room smelled of antiseptic and ozone, and every surface reflected my face back at me. Pale, exhausted, furious. The man in the dark suit stood at the far end of the chamber, watching data scroll across a transparent screen. You're stabilizing beautifully, he said without turning around. My arm burned where the interface clamps fed directly into the tattoo, siphoning its output into the system around me. You're killing me, I said. Eventually, he replied. But slowly. That way the listener doesn't panic. I laughed dryly. You really don't get it. He glanced back. Oh, you think you're in control, I said. You think this is war you can manage. He smiled faintly. It is. No, I said. It's judgment. The lights flickered. Just once. The man frowned. Outside the chamber, alarms began to howl. A voice crackled over the facility comms. Unidentified fleet emerging from folded space. Nocturne signatures confirmed. The man's expression tightened for the first time. Well, he said calmly. That's inconvenient. The facility shuddered as something massive struck its outer hull. I grinned despite the pain. Told you, I whispered. She doesn't run anymore. The man turned back to his screen, fingers flying. Seal the chamber, he ordered. Accelerate extraction. The clamps tightened. Pain tore through me like fire. I screamed, but not in defeat. In defiance. The tattoo flared blinding blue, reacting violently to the sudden stress. Systems overloaded. Consoles shattered. The restraint bands flickered. Outside, the station rocked again, harder. Somewhere in the distance, I felt her. Not words. Not touch. Resolve. The interface screamed warnings the man could no longer ignore. Guardian destabilizing. A synthetic voice announced. Containment failure imminent. The man cursed softly. He looked at me, eyes cold again. You should have stayed behind the bar. I met his gaze. You should have let me. The chamber doors buckled. Light flooded in violet, furious, royal. And the war finally arrived. The chamber ruptured. Not exploded, opened. The reinforced doors folded inward like paper caught in a storm of violet light, their locking mechanisms unraveling at a molecular level. Nocturne warriors poured through the breach, moving with lethal precision, weapons humming with contained fury. Soraya walked at their center. She wasn't cloaked now. She wore Nocturne battle armor, obsidian plates etched with living sigils that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. Her broken fang gleamed faintly, no longer a wound but a mark of survival. Her eyes locked onto me. The moment stretched. Then she was there. Her hand closed around mine, ripping the restraint clamps free as if they were made of mist. Pain flared, then vanished as her bloodline tech stabilized the interface. You came, I breathed. I said I would, she replied. And I don't break my word. The man in the dark suit stepped back, already recalculating, already adapting. Princess, he said smoothly, you're making a mistake. She didn't look at him. Disconnect him, she ordered. A Nocturne engineer knelt beside me, hands moving fast, careful. The clamps disengaged one by one, alarms screaming as the system lost its anchor. The facility began to tear itself apart. You don't understand what you're doing, the man said, voice rising. Without the guardian, the listener will choose, I finished, pushing myself upright despite the pain. The way it was always meant to. He turned to me then, anger finally breaking through his composure. You're throwing away power, he snapped. Godhood. I shook my head. I'm throwing away chains. The tattoo flared brighter than ever. Not blue, not violet, both. The listener answered. Not from below, from everywhere. The facility walls dissolved, revealing not space, not stone, but a vast psychic field, threads of memory, emotion, and identity woven into a living tapestry. The darkness wasn't hostile now. It was vast, aware, and watching. The man staggered. "No, this isn't possible." "You never listened," Soraya said coldly. "You only measured." The hunters fired in panic. Their shots vanished midair, absorbed by the field, converted into harmless ripples of light. The listener spoke, not in words, in understanding. I felt it then, not as a burden but as a conversation. "You carried us. You suffered us. What do you ask in return?" I swallowed, voice shaking. "Let them go." Soraya looked at me sharply. "The echoes," I continued. "The memories. The dead. Let them rest." The field pulsed. The man screamed as the ground beneath him dissolved, memories ripping free, his carefully curated identity unraveling like a thread pulled too hard. "No, please," he begged. The listener didn't punish him. It revealed him. Every choice, every lie, every life reduced to leverage. He collapsed, empty, alive, but stripped of the power he'd built himself around. The hunters fled. The facility disintegrated, no longer anchored to any one reality. Soraya grabbed me as the world folded. "Hold on," she commanded. Light engulfed us. We emerged in silence. The bar, or what was left of it. The neon sign flickered weakly outside, missing letters still arguing with the wind. The dust had settled. The surge was gone. Not suppressed, not siphoned. Balanced. Naomi stood behind the counter, a rifle in her hands, eyes wide. She dropped the weapon. "Dawn?" she whispered. I laughed. A shaky, disbelieving sound, and nodded. "Miss me." She crossed the room and punched me in the shoulder so hard I nearly fell over. "You absolute idiot." Soraya watched from the doorway, armor retracting, leaving her standing in the same dark cloak she'd arrived in. But she carried herself differently now. Not hunted. Not hiding. Peace with being seen. The listener's presence faded to a distant hum. Still there, but no longer screaming for attention. Outside, the plains of Duskridge were still harsh, still dangerous. But the shadows behaved. I leaned against the bar, exhausted. "So," I said, "did we win?" Soraya stepped beside me. "We ended something," she said. "Winning is what comes after." She reached into her cloak and placed something on the counter. A white shard, the broken Fong. Reforged. "Oh, it's yours," she said. "A reminder." I stared at it. "Of what?" She met my eyes. "That you chose mercy when the universe offered you power." I closed my fingers around it. The neon sign buzzed. Night Bar flickered back to life. Whole again. For the first time in years, it stayed lit. A week after the surge quieted, the wind still screamed across Duskridge like it was offended by peace. It rattled the station walls, threw dust against the windows, and tried, every night, to convince the world nothing had changed. But inside my bar, something had. The first thing was the silence. Not the bad kind. Not the holding your breath kind. The kind you get after a storm passes and you realize the roof is still there. Naomi rebuilt the front window with scavenged plating from a derelict cargo hauler, welding it into place with the same stubborn anger she used to fly through asteroid fields. She didn't ask permission. She didn't need it. It was her bar too now, whether she admitted it or not. "You're going to owe me for this?" she said, sparks lighting up her face as she worked. "I already owe you for everything," I replied. She snorted. "Good. I like being owed. Keeps people from leaving." I didn't answer, because she wasn't wrong. The second thing was the patrons. They came back slowly. At first, just the ones who had nowhere else to go. Miners, scavengers, a couple of medics passing through. They sat in the same places, drank the same cheap gin, and stared a little too long at the corners where shadows used to misbehave. But they stayed. And when midnight came, they didn't flinch the way they used to. No search. No screaming generator. No sudden terror that your own reflection might decide it didn't belong to you anymore. Just wind. Just dust. Just people trying to remember what normal felt like. I kept wiping the counter like it could polish away what had happened. Couldn't. But habits aren't meant to fix things. They're meant to hold you upright while you learn how to live again. The third thing was her. Soraya didn't leave. At least, not the way I expected her to. The first night after everything ended, she sat in the darkest booth with her hood down and her hands folded on the table. She didn't hide her eyes. She didn't hide her fangs. She didn't hide what she was. And nobody challenged her. Because on Dusk Ridge, respect didn't come from titles. It came from proof. People had seen her fight, seen her bleed, seen her stand between them and something that didn't even understand mercy. They didn't call her princess. They didn't call her monster. They called her the woman who stayed. She helped without being asked. A scavenger came in with a gash across his scalp, blood dripping onto my floor. Soraya handed him a cloth, poured a vial of blue compound into his wound, and sent him back out into the wind with a glare that said, "Don't waste what I gave you." A miner's kid started waking up crying at night, convinced the shadows were still reaching for him. Soraya sat beside the boy in the booth and spoke to him in a language that sounded like midnight water. The kid fell asleep in minutes. When he woke up, he didn't cry. Naomi watched all of this from behind the bar, suspicious as always. "She's too calm," Naomi muttered one evening, pouring herself a drink. "I don't trust calm." "Calm is her default," I said. Naomi glanced at my arm. "Your arm still glowing?" I flexed my wrist. The tattoo remained black now. Quiet. Dormant again. But different. Not asleep. Listening. "Only when I get angry," I admitted. Naomi grimaced. "So, always." I smiled faintly. "Working on it." Outside, the wind howled like laughter. The fourth thing was the door. Not the front door. The one beneath the bar. Stayed sealed. The listener didn't demand anything anymore. It didn't pull. It didn't scream. But sometimes, on certain nights, when the air felt too still and the stars looked too sharp, my wrist would itch faintly. Not pain. A reminder. Soraya told me the listener was still there, still doing what it was meant to do. Filtering. Releasing. Balancing. "It will never be silent," she said one night when the bar was empty and the neon buzz sounded like distant insects. "Not completely." I looked at her. "And you?" She stared into her glass of water. "Always water," and her voice softened. "I can't go back to what I was," she said. "Not after exile. Not after blood. Not after you." "Is that supposed to be flattering?" I asked. Her lips curved. "No. It's supposed to be honest." She reached into her cloak and placed the reforged thong on the counter between us. It was small, white, almost ordinary, except for the faint violet sheen that rippled through it like moonlight trapped in bone. "You keep it," she said. "I already said I would." "No," she corrected. "Not as a trophy." She tapped the thong gently. "As a boundary." I frowned. "Boundary between what?" "Between the man who hits to stop violence," she said, "and the man who hits because he can." I stared at it, then looked up at her. "You think I'm capable of that?" Her gaze didn't waver. "Everyone is." I swallowed. "Then why trust me?" She leaned forward, elbows on the counter, eyes bright. "Because you chose mercy when it hurt," she said. "That is the rarest kind." The bar's lights flickered. Not from the generator. From something deeper. A slow pulse through the floor plates, like the station breathing. Then it stopped. A quiet reassurance. A month later, the first Nocturne Warrior came to the bar. Not as an invader, as a guest. Then another. Then 3 more over the next weeks. Moving through the sector quietly, helping settlements that had been losing people to shadow storms and missing nights they couldn't explain. They never stayed long, but they always left something behind. Tools, medicine, fuel, a little more safety in places that hadn't had it. The bar became a waypoint, a sanctuary, a place where humans and Nocturne blood sat in the same room and, for a moment, didn't have to be enemies. Naomi painted over the old bullet holes. She didn't patch them all. She left a few. "Character," she said. "Trauma," I corrected. "Same thing," she replied. On the quietest night of all, When the wind calmed enough to let the station rest, Soraya sat at the counter instead of the booth. She removed her glove. The skin of her hand was pale, marked with faint scars that weren't there before. She placed her palm near my wrist. Not touching, just close. The tattoo didn't glow, but it warmed. She tilted her head. It remembers. So do I said. She looked at me with those violet eyes that had once promised death and now, somehow, promised something else. What will you do? She asked. If they come again? I thought of Calder, empty and broken. I thought of the man in the dark suit, power stripped away like rotten cloth. I thought of the monster that had only wanted to be held. And I thought of my bar, my broken sign, my dented counter, my stubborn people. I closed my fingers around the reforged Fong. If they come again, I said, they'll learn something. Soraya's mouth curved into a smile that showed the gap where the old Fong had been, and the new one, gleaming, steady. What? I leaned closer, voice low. That this place, I said, doesn't belong to hunters anymore. The neon sign buzzed outside. Night bar burned bright against the dust. And the wind, angry, eternal, unstoppable, finally sounded a little less like screaming and a little more like applause.